Good morning, class.
Good morning, Miss.
Today we have a very interesting lesson. If you notice, I have a container here, and inside of this container, guess what? I have a mystery object. And your task is to tell me what you think is in this container. So who would like to go first? Good. So you're going to take 1 minute to ask me questions in relation to what is in this container. Alright? I see some excited students there. Yes, who would like to know what is in this container? Yes, Peter?
Is it something we use in school?
Yes, it is something that you use in school on a regular basis.
Is it made of plastic?
Yes, it is made of plastic.
Is it something we use in art class?
Not exactly, but a good try.
Does it have multiple parts?
Yes, it actually has multiple parts.
Is it something we use in maths?
Definitely, Johnson. Okay, your time is up. Now, this is what you're going to do for me. You're going to write down your guess, alright, what you think that I have in this container. And you're going to give me suggestions as to why you think it is so. So, your guess is your point, and why you think so will be your evidence. Alright, let me hear your guesses. Yes, Samson.
I think it's a stapler because we use those in school. They're made of plastic and they have multiple parts like a base and a staple holder.
Good try, but not that close. Oh yes, I'm seeing Malachi. Yes, Malachi.
Miss, I think it's a pair of scissors. We use them in school. They're often made of plastic and metal and have multiple parts like blades and handles.
Another good suggestion, but not quite close. Remember, I give you a little hint indicating that you can use them in a math class. You use them there quite often. Ooh, I'm seeing an excited hand there. Yes, Ezekiel.
Miss, it's a calculator. It is used in school. It is made of plastic and has buttons and the screen.
Great, let's see what it is. Yes, Ezekiel, you're correct. It's a calculator. Okay, so the activity that we just did, you would have noticed that we would have used point and we had to use evidence. Now, today we're going to dive further. We're going to go to the novel For the Life of Letitia by Marley Hodge, and we're going to examine the theme of family relationship. We're going to look at the points that are used when we're doing an analysis in relation to that theme. We're going to look at the evidence, and we're going to give, of course, an explanation to support our evidence.
Okay, students. So now let's delve into exactly how we can use the point, evidence, and explanation strategy. And as mentioned, we're using the text for the life of a teacher. So as you would have noticed, I would have given out some excerpts of that text for you to look at. And in case some of you didn't get a chance to read the text before you came to class, I also have an audio of that excerpt. So let's listen to that audio briefly.
Home and not polishing his car, sat in the drawing room and took his son in hand. Michael, take your book and come here, he called out in a voice like a policeman. Michael would look dismayed and spend as long as possible searching for his reading book, which usually meant that his father had to...
Good. So the first step in our point, evidence, and explanation strategy is to develop the point. So now that people have listened to that audio snippet of an excerpt from the life of Letitia, let's start by examining some negative behaviors in describe a behavior that suggests that Mr. Cephas engages in negative behavior in his family? Yes, Sarah.
Sir, his father shouts at him.
Good. Anyone else? Yes, Suzanne.
He hates Michael and insults him.
Good, that is correct. And tell me, how would you describe that behavior? Go ahead, Letitia.
Sir, I would say the behavior was an abusive one.
Good, I like that. Good. So now you have described Mr. Cephas' behavior as abusive. We need to capture that thought in a statement. And that statement is referred to as our point. Now this is an example of what that point might look like. Mr. Cephas exhibits abusive behavior that negatively impacts Michael's well-being. Good. So now that we have our statement, that is our point. Our next step is called gathering evidence. And in order to gather evidence, you need to look for specific examples from the text. In order to do so, what I'd like you to do is to look for specific actions or dialogue that show that Mr. Cephas is abusive. So now that we have a copy of the excerpts that I gave you up on the screen, I would like you to point out your evidence to me. And as you point out your evidence, I will highlight it. So, give me examples of your evidence. Okay, Suzanne, go ahead.
Sir, Mr. Cephas claps Michael behind the head every time he got a wrong word and batters him with the book.
Good. So now that I've highlighted that bit of evidence, is there any other piece of evidence that anyone would like to highlight? Go, Sarah.
Yes, sir. Sometimes Mr. Cephas would work up such a rage that he took off his belt and started to beat Michael.
Great, that's a good piece of evidence. Let me highlight that. Great. So, with the excerpts you have and what is highlighted on the board, I would like you to pay close attention and see that this is what we would do when we want to pull evidence to support our point from the text. Good. So far we've learned that Mr. Cephas' behavior leaves Michael afraid and intimidated. So now that we've gathered that evidence from the text, our next step is to write an explanation for that evidence. Good. So, in order for us to write an explanation for evidence, we need to understand the significance of the evidence that we look over. And in order to understand the significance of that evidence, let us try to think about the consequences of the abuse that Michael suffered. So, what impact does that abuse have on Michael? Anyone? Yes, Letitia?
Sir, it might cause long-term emotional and psychological harm to Michael.
That's an interesting response. Yes. Anyone else? Yes, Rebecca, go ahead.
Sir, it can cause trauma and fear.
Exactly. So, we need to understand that. By understanding that, it helps us to better understand the theme. So now that we have our point, we have extracted our evidence, and we have explained our evidence, let's put it all together together in writing. Good. So now that we're at the stage where we put it all together, I have some flashcards here. And I'm going to tell you in a second what we're going to do with these flashcards. But they're flashcards of various characters from the novel. And there's one I'd like to project so you can see exactly what those flashcards look like. Good. So, in addition to flashcards on Mr. Cephas, I have other flashcards here for other characters. Thank you, Susan. So I'm going to give these out to others. Good, so now that you have those flashcards, and instead of using them to put it all together, I also have in my hand some graphic organizers, so that you can organize your thoughts when you are writing paragraphs to analyze various characters. And this is an example of what that graphic organizer should look like. So let me give these out so that you guys can have your copies to write on. Good, so this is an example of what a completed graphic organizer should look like. If you notice, the text is at the top there for the life of Letitia. The author is there, Merle Hodge, and this is where you put your point. What is the main point you're claim about the text or character? If you notice that point that we had from earlier, it's right there. And you've inserted where it came from. In the novel For the Life of Letitia by Merle Hodge, who is the author. And then we have the point that we highlighted earlier. After that, you will indicate some evidence to explain that point. And if you notice the evidence that you gave me earlier, I have it right here. Where Mr. Cephas would clap Michael behind the head when he got the word wrong. Good. And here is your second piece of evidence, where it mentioned that sometimes Mr. Cephas would beat Michael with a belt. Now after you have the evidence, if you notice with the graphic organizer, you need to explain that evidence. This is the explanation here. The text clearly shows that Mr. Cephas' physical abuse, including hitting Michael with a book and beating him with a belt, to illustrate his aggressive behavior. So after we will explain the evidence, we need to conclude using a statement that sums it up. And this is a concluding statement. Mr. Cephas' harsh words, particularly his physical aggression, show a damaging form of discipline that can lead to long-term psychological harm for Michael. Good. So this is what it looks like when it's all put together. We have our points at the top in black, and then we have our evidence that we would have pulled in green directly from the passage. And to indicate we would have pulled it from the passage, I have a statement, the text states that, to indicate that we're pulling directly from the passage. And you could add the page number if you have it. Then, in blue, we have an explanation for evidence, and then a concluding statement that sums up our analysis by paragraph. Great. So, this is the point where I give you an exercise. Remember those flashcards that I gave you earlier? Well, I'm also, and that graphic organizer that I also gave you. But along with those, you'll be given some excerpts from the novel concerning other characters in the novel. And you're going to look at those flashcards that I would have given you and those excerpts, and what you're going to do for me, you're going to select a character that illustrates either positive or negative behavior in the family. And you are going to look for evidence from the excerpt, and you're going to write an explanation to support your evidence. So please use the graphic organizer that you received as a guide to help you to jot down your points.
Alright, now come to the concluding aspect of the lesson. Alright, so today we would have learned about the PEE strategy. And PEE strategy stands for
Point,
Point,
evidence,
evidence,
explanation.
and explanation. Very good. Good. Now I have a mnemonic which is SSE. And this mnemonic stands for state, show, and explain. Good. Now look at the board. What do you think state means? Yes, Chikwan.
Miss, it means to make your point.
Good. State means to state your point or claim or make a claim or a main idea. And then we have the other mnemonic which is show. And what does show stands for?
Miss, I give you evidence from the text.
Right, very good. So show your evidence, and this can be specific examples or quotes from the text. And now we have the final mnemonic, which is explain. And what does it mean when we're explaining?
Miss, it means that you explain the evidence that you pulled from the text.
Yes, explain the relevance, and that is how your evidence supports your point. So now, for homework, we're going to look at another theme, and that theme is racism. And you're going to look for references related to that theme so that we can discuss it when we meet again. Any questions?
No, Miss.
Okay. With that being said, I would like you to submit your work. I will be marking it. And I trust that you had a wonderful lesson, and I